So, hi everyone, my name is Daphne Thomson, and I help local governments play with AI in practical ways to make it easy for everyone and to find those efficiencies in a real, tangible way. And today I have the utmost pleasure to speak to Faith Wood. I just call her the brain science lady because she is freaking amazing. So, please help me in welcoming Faith today. And we're going to chat about how AI and our brains work together.
I would love to chat about that with you, Daphne. So thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Do you want to give just a quick background about you and your expertise?
Yeah, absolutely. So I run a company called Inspiring Minds Consulting. I started that company in 2004, so been at the game a little while now. I started out really dealing with conflict resolution and communication. I think we're always in conflict, sometimes with ourselves, sometimes with AI. And my background is in law enforcement. During COVID, when everyone else was watching Netflix, I decided to take deeper dives into neuroscience, which is potentially where a lot of our conversations have happened when you and I met at the Thomson conference. So really looking forward to chatting a little bit. I was just in Toronto actually talking about AI and the ethics of it. So this should be a really fun conversation.
Awesome. All right. So let's dive straight into it. The key that is when we use AI, it's exactly the same as when we go to gym. We practice. If we go to gym, we pick up weights. We kind of like build our muscles and it grows. The minute we stop, all of that turns to flop. We lose our muscles. Now, AI is kind of the same. It does take away quite a bit of our thinking processes because it just does it for us. What we are now more geared to is we become the critical thinker. That's it. But if we don't apply those critical thinking skills on a consistent basis, because we kind of a little bit inherently lazy, we lose it, right? So how do we work with this to still keep AI in the efficiency of it? And yes, I am a solid AI geek. I love this stuff, but to also keep our critical thinking skills alive.
I think this is a question that so many of us are really wrestling with. And if we could really back up even slightly, I would start with the fact that maybe we're not lazy, but potentially we've been trained to be lazy. In other words, we have gotten really good at outsourcing decision making. And it kind of started well before the AI, the chat GPTs, the Claudes, the Monets, all of those that are out there right now. It kind of started with GPS. And we started to really rely on technology to help us. We get technology to help us drive our car, remind us that we're changing lanes, remind us that there's somebody behind us and we should check our mirrors, and alarm bells going off. And I think that for quite a long time, we have been training our brains to accept the fact that we're outsourcing decision making. And when we do that, it does somewhat inherently make us lazy. But the idea is that it allows us freedom to pursue other interests, to keep our focus on other things. Sometimes that's dangerous, like in the example of a car, people falling asleep with, behind the wheel of self-driving cars. We're not quite ready for that yet. And maybe that is also true when it comes to AI. I think AI came out and suddenly it gave so many people access to a very different way of doing research, of taking a look at information. And then we saw all the rules and the policies come out and educators saying, hey, you can't write your entire paper using AI. But back when I went to school, we had to go to the library and look it up. And we were just as guilty then. We would go through and the bibliography section and say, yeah, sure, I used the encyclopedia. Yeah, sure, I used all these other resources, whether we did or we didn't. I think what AI as a tool has done is given us access to doing more refinements. So when you talk about critical thinking, we need to constantly be challenging what AI gives us. We know that AI is learning. and it's learning us, it's learning our voice, it's learning
Mm-hmm.
our procedures and our policies and our regulatory decision making, and it's trying to provide what we ask it for. So where we can really work on developing critical thinking is getting super good at what we ask AI to do. Are we asking AI to do our research and then we just assume it's correct? That lazy part? Or are we asking AI to find, to take a document that we've created and ask it to look at it through the lens of our biggest critic and then take it apart so that we're not missing something? I think AI is really good at providing design and architecture, and where it cannot replace humanity is in our ability to have discernment, to recognize emotional context, to see the opportunities that exist. And if we even just stopped for a second and thought about how often we've wanted to rewrite an email because what we want to say and what we should say are very different. And I think that's a place where AI can really support us. You can say, you're being a bit emotional right now. And it might sound a bit more diplomatic if you framed it this way. But we also need to be careful not to sound like robots. And, I think that's the critical thinking piece. How are you investing in AI, and how are you getting AI to do some heavy lifting for you, but not outsourcing all of the decision making? So if we start with something, as opposed to, hey, AI, write my report for me.
So there's actually been a few studies that's been done through, I think it was MMP and McKinsey and company, but about people, as you said, would do the research and they're not actually verifying by not just clicking on the link. That's the smallest step to it. Just click on the link. See if it actually shows up. See if it is a reputable source that it comes from and not a 404 error, because that also happens. Or just not just opening up a whole website instead of the source that you're actually looking for. So what are some of the tricks that we can start implementing right now to keep that almost brain function alive while still making use of the immense efficiencies and support that it does give? Because I really don't want to get rid of AI. I love this. And I get to do so much more. And so does all of the local governments that I work with.
I think what's interesting is that AI has given us an opportunity to actually have more depth in our report writing, has more depth and more grounded research. But as you say, click on the link, do yourself a favor. But the other side, I would say.
I recently wrote an article that was like, just click on the damn link.
Yeah.
Just do that.
Just do it. Just do it. But we could also say the same is true about our stress levels. So our stress levels are reducing our cognitive capacity. Mm-hmm. So is incivility in the workplace, so rudeness. Place where AI has actually kicked up or reduced the tension, the 30% decline that we see when we witness rude behaviors is, my smartwatch. It blows smoke up my butt all the time. It tells me what a great job I'm doing, how I slept better last night, how I have improved. I've had a nice rest period. Now would be a good time to exercise. I mean, we can use AI to give us alerts and wake our brains up. And I think, the car analogy is an easy one to think of. We need to implement a bit of play, a bit of skepticism, a bit of introspection. So a chance to say, hey, it could be incorrect. If it were, what would I be looking at? What would I ask it? So I can use AI to kind of look at what I've already thought would be a great idea and then ask it to think about how I improve on that. How would I improve my thinking if I don't know what's going on with my camera. I'm sorry. How would I improve my thinking? And could we leverage our ability to use AI by constantly second guessing it? if we could be our own critics and say, does this improve what I'm working on, or does it meander away from my original intent? Yeah, so what it can do is we can improve our critical thinking by starting with the question of being the cynic or the pessimist with our AI. And we can say, is this where we initially started? Is this what my intent was? Is it still talking about the things that I want it to talk about? Because let's face it, AI will wander
No, it does.
just like our coworkers. It will wander off task. It will
That is very true, because every time in my training, when I train local governments, it's think about this as if it's your intern. Your intern doesn't actually know things. They do lose track of thought at sometimes. They don't have the experience to back up from. They don't have the context. They don't have the corporate memory. So these are the things that you need to explain to AI from start, because it does become your coworker. But how do we speak to it so that it basically, like you said, keep in line? But now, when we do all these things, and now we are trained to do this, I still find that we kind of need additional critical thinking training, even if it's just for ourselves. So when I help local governments in their policy writing, I always try and incorporate critical thinking training, not just AI training. So how do we, just from a day-to-day basis, what could be one of those things that we help ourselves with in the critical thinking? Should we play Wordle every day? Should we go have a quarterly escape room with our team? Are we going to have monthly debates? What are we going to do? Or what are some of those things that we can do? Because reprompting your AI to be a butthead to you and just telling everything bad, yeah, of course we can do that. But sometimes you also just need an answer from it.
Sometimes you do. And I think it's okay. I think, as I said earlier with the emails, it's sometimes okay to have it say, this is what I want to say. Now make it sound more professional.
Or in my term, I'm like, please make it sound more Canadian.
Yeah, exactly. More apologetic. But things that we do to keep our brains alert anyway, one of the studies that recently came out is that by, let's say, the 2050, 1 in 2 of us is going to be diagnosed with dementia. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're not doing enough to keep our brains engaged. We're sitting in front of Netflix. We're expecting reels to entertain us. We're managing our stress through outsourcing instead of doing physical activities and mental agility things that keep the brain active. So a few things that you can do on a regular basis, AI aside. I just want to say, AI aside, whether you're having a stressful day or you've had a rude encounter, some of the best things that you can do to keep your brain active is to really be thinking strategically, always be thinking about puzzles and games. Sometimes we just take an interrupt and we do something that lowers the temperature in our bodies and in our brains. And so we might do that by doing something like I call the easy button, which is there's a techno button that you can actually purchase, which is the instant dance party. And it looks like a Staples easy button, and basically tell your entire team that when they've had a really stressful moment or they're really ticked off at AI and they can't take another request, that anyone has permission to hit the button. And when they hit the button, techno music plays for about 45 seconds. And everyone must get out of their chairs and dance. Now, part of that is we spend way too much time staring at a screen. And if we're in this kind of inert position all the time, and we're asking the brain to do things without a break, then this is the challenge that we have is we have limited bandwidth. Or if we only ever ask the brain to do the same thing over and over, to your point about, do I do Wordle every day? Well, I think doing Wordle is good. But doing anything all the time becomes repetitive, too much repetition, and the brain starts to create what I call a lane in their neurons, the way they fire, a laneway kind of akin to a Saskatchewan gravel highway in the spring. It gets deeply rutted. And it's harder to shift your thinking when you have this long-term habit of holding the same kind of questions. Same as asking AI to be a cynic.
Mm.
All of those things, anything that you do over and over and over again is still going to produce a habit. And that habit may or may not be helpful. So interrupt it with gameplay, interrupt it with surprising or novel thinking. There was a book that was written at the very beginning of the neuroscience movement, neuroplasticity movement, and it was called The Brain That Changes Itself. It was written by a bunch of physicians who were trying to figure out, if you had a stroke, could we trick a part of your body into functioning better just by the way we think about it? And they proved that it could be done. It's called The Brain That Changes Itself. And quite a great book, really looking at the fact that we used to think the brain cells die off. If we don't use it, we lose it. It's a bit like going to the gym. We got to use what God intended us to use, and we need it to be firing on all cylinders. But some of the other things was that if we always expect the same outcomes, we're going to get the same outcomes. And this is another reason why we struggle with AI, right? Is that we're getting more and more robust, more and more research. But now when you use AI to write all your reports, there's an expectation built in by your end user about how you look and sound. And so we need to be mindful of that. It should sound like you. You should be able to rewrite materials to sound like you, not to fill it. One of the things that I've noticed is that we take an assessment, for example, a report that's going to go to council, and we've got it so full of stuff that just doesn't matter because AI gave it to us. Well, what was the question? Just answer the question. Just prepare the report to help them answer the question. That's what.
But then again, we bring that back to critical thinking. And when you speak to an intern of going, hey, I'm great, you did amazing with all this research, but this is the only part that actually matters to me. Please dive deeper into this only.
Yeah, exactly. Critical thinking. How do we take it apart? And the thing is we have to learn. So one of the studies in neuroplasticity is to say there needs to be more than one exit ramp. We need to have more than one way to get out of a building if there's a fire. That's critical thinking, the ability to assess that a window is an escape route, as is the door, as is some other element or way of getting out of the building.
So I'm hearing you say that escape rooms is a good way to do critical thinking exercises.
Yeah, because it'll really challenge you. There's a couple of things that escape rooms do. One is it'll really level the playing field a little bit. You'll see people who are using and firing on all cylinders. Mm-hmm. But the first time that you ever encounter the escape room, you don't even know where to start.
That is true.
I think the same is true for AI. It usually takes the first 10 minutes in an escape room for everyone to figure out what's the question.
And then how this actually works, like how the puzzles fit into one another, because the same pattern usually occurs in all of these type of plays. So then it comes back to, again, for me, I always refer it back to physical training. If your muscles are used to one specific way, you do need a disruptor in order for it to fire again on all the different syllables. So I fully get that. So what are practical things that, that our teams or our local governments that are now listening to this can actually incorporate in their, I wouldn't say policy because that would be too restrictive, but in their planning of keeping their mental health of their teams alive while still finding the balance of the efficiencies and the outputs with AI. So we've already said the dance party is one. We've already said something like Wordle, escape rooms, debates, whatever. What are other things that even they can incorporate into their staff retreats or something?
Well, you need healthy breaks, right? A lot of times in municipal government, we tend to work through all of our breaks because we feel the pressure, intense pressure to keep going, but your brain needs a break. It needs a break from the screens. It needs a break from the environment. So walking and talking, having a walking meeting, getting outside. So that, especially in good weather, I get in the winter, it can be more challenging, but what environments are you creating in your workspace that free people from the chain of the desk and the screen? And if we want them to do critical thinking, we have to change their environment up periodically. We need to give them an opportunity for a reset or a refresh. And so, where we've been taking away we've gone to these open environments for workspaces, which make people absolutely agitated. And as I said, that stress level climbs up, we take shortcuts because just want to get something done. We're so annoyed and so irritated. So these are the kinds of things that we need to be thinking architecturally. How do we create quiet spaces? How do we create creative spaces? You say we want people to be critical thinkers. Well, coming with that is creative thinking. That ability to create something that isn't necessarily on spec, to do novel learning, to have an opportunity to do something you've never tried before. We were talking about the escape room. We know that takes 10 to 15 minutes to figure out how it works. But once you've done 3 or 4 of them, they're all kind of the same.
Exactly.
So we need to create environments where people feel free to do creative work, something that doesn't have a prescribed ending, something that they can contribute to in a way that gets them thinking about a bigger problem, more complex problem, without an expectation to solve it. So we need to be...
Okay, but that's super interesting. So that seems to me like, let's just all build a puzzle together. Like it's a 10,000 piece puzzle. But how does that keep accountability in place if there is no end solution?
Sometimes there aren't end solutions to complex problems, like housing, the unhoused, the addicted, all of those kind of really complex problems. How are we allowing our teams in government, not just leaders, but the entire teams, to contribute to a bigger issue? That's the big puzzle. And so it doesn't, a puzzle in and of itself on the staff room break table could be helpful. People can add 1 or 2. It's a nice de-stressor. But if what we're trying to do is a much bigger, more cohesive, more complex thinking model, we might have a problem up on the wall that people add to. I used to do this in mathematicians.
I was just going to say, when they have the big problem, the massive problems written on the board, and the whole class needs to try and solve it.
Correct. And why do we do one thing in one environment and then forget about it when we move into another? There are lots of really complex problems in the world. They don't have to be solved immediately. But if we have great minds contributing to it, so they're thinking about it in their day-to-day activities, and they come and they add a little thought, that can be a puzzle that's worth solving. So really,
like something like an open house for our internal staff.
Yes.
Okay.
So we start to incorporate some of these design elements that aren't just about asking ratepayers, or not just asking our stakeholders, but also asking our people. That's our most valuable resource. Yeah. And expecting them to be able to come forward. Having a shared reading library. So somebody's been listening to something that's incredible, and then getting that word out about it. For example, I just finished an Audible book called The Field, not a new one, an old one, but it was really talking about how we look at science and how we look at how we whether we follow an idea or whether we repel an idea. All of these things are critical thinking. And so now suddenly you have a resource library where it's available for people who are interested in this kind of dialogue and conversation. Back in the old days, we had book clubs.
I actually, in one of my teams that I led, critical thinking has always been a really passion of mine. So what we did is we used to choose a book as a team per month. One was Crucial Conversations, or those type of that will help us in the workplace as well. And on a Friday afternoon, we had an hour or 2 hours where we all just discussed this. Sometimes I brought in a speaker to address these things with the books that we read. But I found that type of collaborative thinking environment really, really helpful.
Yes.
So would that be just a silly idea that they can also incorporate to keep the critical thinking skills alive?
100%. How else are we going to do it if we don't challenge ourselves to have these exposure to new ideas, new thoughts? We can talk about critical thinking all day long, but if we don't create environments for it,
I love that. Yes.
it's not possible. And
Yep.
we need to keep our brains firing like students. You know, when we're going to school, we're constantly challenged to think broader, expand your thinking, develop your critical thinking, ask more questions. And then we get into workplaces and we say, can you just focus on the work we gave you? And can you just be a little quieter when you're on the phone? And can you not take so many breaks and so much socializing? Part of why the book club works is you're talking about something, everyone participates in it, and there's permission.
If they read the book and didn't just drink the wine.
I got to tell you, in school, one of my gifts in school was the ability to put thoughts on paper. And so lots of times I didn't read the book and I would have to do the English paper. But what I did have to do was talk to those that did and gather their intel. So there is, you know, some people say, I can't read a whole book, I fall asleep. That's fine. Listen to it. Get into dialogue. The thing that improves your mental health, your brain health, is that you're discussing it. And so you have a different opinion and you're hearing different opinions. That's what expands our neural network. Do I agree with that? Don't I agree with that? Why would I agree with that? What do I believe? There's so much out there right now that we could be listening to around AI that would challenge our curiosity about it.
I love that what you just said, because that brings it down into the actual practical part of when AI gives you a report and be like, no, I don't like that word. That's not quite what I wanted to say. Let's reword this. So it becomes into like a discussion where AI now is the intern that did the work and we talk about it. And us as the human makes the final decision and guides the way forward. But like you said, we need that conversation to have that. And AI is actually, in how I prompted, a brilliant brainstorming platform. So we're like, oh, I never thought about it like that. But how about if we do it this way around? I mean, it's just, so I love it. So what I'm taking out of this conversation is that, one, we still need to practice our brain. We still need to think about it. There are numerous different ways on how we can interrupt our brain programs. But the key aspect of it is still actually different opinions in conversation.
Yes, that's what makes humans irreplaceable.
I love that. And I totally agree with that. That human is still of the utmost importance and we are the guiding force. It's who's the human? That's my tagline. Like, who's the human? Who makes the decision?
Who gets to make the decisions?
Exactly.
And those that make decisions shouldn't be given faulty reasoning to do it.
I love that. Yes, they shouldn't. So check the references, verify, click the damn link. Exactly. Faith, this has been amazing. How can people get hold of you?
They can reach my website at www.imind, as in I really do mind. It really stands for Inspiring Minds, but imind.ca, or you can always email me at info@imind.ca.
Thank you so much. I'll also put that in the links, and for anyone that wants to reach you, because I know you do amazing workshops with local government teams to expand their thinking and just dig down on the little things to make them flourish in their work environment.
Thank you so much for having me, Daphne. It's been a ton of fun chatting with you today.
Thanks so much, Faith. And that was it. If you want to get hold of Faith, the links are down in the bottom. And thank you so much for listening today. If you've got any other topic that you'd like to chat about AI about, please feel free to send me anything that you like. And I'd love to make a conversation about that. Till next time.
Till next time.